Again, welcome to the second of our fulfillment series webinars, this one on managing, measuring, and coaching for sustainable performance. I'm Bill Sheeman, and the author of Fulfilled, which we'll talk a little bit about during our session. And I'm delighted today to have with me a guest, Marissa Harris, who is the former CHRO of CIT for their New York businesses, and also a life coach today. Marissa, welcome.
Thank you, Bill. And I'm so delighted to have this opportunity to participate in this webinar series and to speak to the audience.
While we're waiting for a few more folks, because I see people are signing on as we're speaking, maybe you can share with folks a moment of how we met.
Well, we met about 23 years ago. It's hard to believe. When a company of CIT, one of the businesses of CIT, had a new CEO who came in from a different business, and he had a vision that he was going to take a mediocre, stagnant company to #1 globally. And he had heard about this process called, which was brand new at the time, the balanced scorecard. And you came in to do a survey for the whole corporation and met with this new CEO. And together you decided that this organization, this business would be ripe for putting in place this new performance and improvement system.
It's hard to imagine that this was 23 years ago. Time flies, I guess, when you're having fun.
Right.
Well, it's delightful to have you on the program today. And the book I mentioned is Fulfilled: Critical Choices, Work, Home, Life. And Danielle, I think, who is our program manager, is on. And today, for those people attending, we have a discount. Is that right?
Yes, we do. At the bottom of the invitation you received for this webinar, there is a 30% discount coupon. So if you follow the link, you can enter the code included in the email, and you'll be able to get a hard copy of Fulfilled for 30% off. And if you're not into the hardcover book and you prefer to take Fulfilled on the go, we also have Fulfilled as an audiobook now on Amazon.
Yeah, that's great. Thanks, Danielle. And that's a new opportunity we have, that the book has just come out on the audio, and I was delighted. I'm not moderating it, so we got somebody with a lovely voice who's doing it, but I think you'll enjoy it. The Fulfilled series that we started really began in some ways with an event with Marissa in my life later on, which we'll share with you and keep it a little bit as a suspense. But the work we began in this area came about from that interaction. In the last series, we had people who had questions about who's Metris Group, and so we've added in a slide here. If you don't know Metris, we're a leading firm in the diagnostic field and advisory services, and we worked with firms large and small, from Fortune 5 firms all the way down to small not-for-profits. And our Metris Institute, which was my commitment in founding Metris nearly 30 years ago, it'll be 30 years this January, to have a give back of our Metris Institute, which is our not-for-profit arm, and a commitment to doing research in the field of human capital and business performance, which we continuously do and publish. So there's a lot of free information available on our website or under the Metris Institute if you want to avail yourself of that. So this series, what we committed to do, and this is part 2, and we'll continue this series in the spring, is to bring personal tools that will really help you to increase fulfillment at work and home, become the CEO of your life. The second area is organizational. We know that most of the people who are attending are organizational leaders who we're bringing ideas, tools, and approaches to to leverage fulfillment. It sounds like we might have some technical issues. Let me. So we're just going to make an adjustment here on the slideshow. Go ahead and slideshow and start. Okay. So I think we've got that corrected. So Marissa, do you want to tell us about the definition of fulfillment?
Yeah, absolutely. So fulfillment is achieving one's dreams and creating a lifestyle that brings exceptional happiness and inner peace. And just let's dissect that a little bit. So, you know, in order to achieve one's dreams or one's visions, obviously, you have to have defined it and described it. And in the first webinar, Bill went over how to do that. But it's also creating a lifestyle. For fulfillment means a full life, a lifestyle that around every area of your life is, you know, it's sort of like the summation that brings exceptional happiness and inner peace, so that, you know, you end your day and say, life is good. I just want to note that thing about inner peace. Inner peace doesn't mean that there you are, you know, look at that beautiful photo of, you know, at the ocean and the waters are calm. Inner peace comes from being able to have the skills, the tools, the confidence that you can deal with the small, the medium, the large challenges that come up in your life, and still maintain that sense of life is good. You know, and the interesting thing, and Bill's going to talk more about this, that, you know, research shows that 99% of employees want to be high. It's important, it's a critical desire for them to be fulfilled. And so, Bill, what have you found in the research that you've done?
Well, sadly, despite many people who we interviewed who are pretty successful in their job, and in fact, we interviewed a lot of people in higher level executive positions in corporations, only 20% were highly fulfilled. So that was a bit of a puzzlement to us, because many of them had had what we would consider on the surface successful outcomes, high pay, high job title, and other things that you might say were trappings of success. But at the end of the day, only 20% were fulfilled. And so we began this quest to figure out, so what makes a difference? Why are some people finding high fulfillment in their lives and others are not? And certainly work is a major factor in fulfillment for many people. So one of the things you might think about yourself, and we don't have time today to do this in detail as we might in our workshops, but you might think about how you would rate yourself overall on fulfillment, from 1 being low to 10 being high. And, you know, there's no one going to judge you, so you can be honest with yourself about where you fall. So one of the things that we realized in the work we did, though, is that fulfillment is tied to two really, really important factors that we spend a lot of time in our lives. One is work and career, and the other is relationships. And we'll come back to relationships in a moment. But if you think about work and career fulfillment, it's achieving one's career goals. And think about this for a moment, a productive lifestyle. It's about a lifestyle at work and involving your career that brings this sense of accomplishment. We know back to early psychological studies that efficacy is so important. Having an impact, being able to make a difference. But balance is also important, that people who are tended to be one-sided, one focus for their life tended to be less fulfilled. So it's really a combination of those factors that went into work and career fulfillment. And one question you might ask yourself is, how fulfilled are you at work? Rate yourself on, again, 1 low, 10 high. How would you feel at 10 really being the ultimate of having that impact, making a difference, feeling daily happiness in what you do? And another question that's important is, how fulfilled would you say employees are in your organization? Are they fulfilled? Are they struggling to find that kind of fulfillment, making a difference? That's important. And again, one of the things we're offering to you today that's just been created by one of our research scientists, Carl Persing, is a measurement, a survey that you could take of yourself if you're interested, and Danielle will join us at the end of the session to mention how you can do that, and we'll be happy to provide that free assessment for you. So one question is, so what? What's the impact? Does fulfillment make a difference? Why should I care? And I think the research is pretty strong in this area. I just gave you 3 slides, 3 factoids, I guess, here. One is 50% of voluntary turnover is caused by stress in the workplace. Some work done by a number of researchers. Less productivity. There's more absence, and people have health issues. Gallup continues to talk about the issues of disengagement, and whether you believe their exact numbers or not, the reality is no matter who you look at, 4, 5, 6 firms report pretty significant levels of disengagement, or what we find only partially engaged employees. One of the organizations we've worked with that just won the Jack in the Box, won the HRM Impact Award, is Jack in the Box organization. For those of you who may be in the Northeast and there isn't a Jack in the Box near you, they're in many, many states, west and south. And they've discovered that when managers in organizations have employees with lower fulfillment, lower alignment, lower sense of engagement, that their revenue, their profit, their guest satisfaction in each restaurant is much lower, and they have much higher turnover. So it makes a big difference to the bottom line of the organization, the concept of fulfillment. So with that, I'd like to come back and talk a little bit about the art of fulfillment. And in the book, and in the first session we covered the science of fulfillment. That is, it's something everyone can do. There's clear elements that lead to that, which I would label as a bit of visioning. Where am I going to go in life? And do I have a clear path? Do I understand where I'm headed? And have I created a blueprint for how I'm going to get there? That was part of the science part, and how am I going to measure it? Today we're talking more about the art of fulfillment. And these are really the lessons that we garnered from the most fulfilled people in organizations. And 10 areas came up pretty regularly as areas that were of concern, or areas that people used, tools they used to be successful. Keeping the end in mind, nurturing your body, building a network, sticking to your values, and so forth. But one of the most overarching areas is this whole issue of resilience and grit. And so today we've built this this webinar around how do you, in a world of constant change today, world where pressure is increasing, where there are work-life balance challenges today, how do you build the resilience to deal with it? Because we're not going to get rid of the world. We're not going to make the world spin any slower. And so some people we studied really brought some skills to the table with resilience and grit that enabled them to be successful in this type of environment. So Marissa, can you tell us a little bit about what resilience is and why it's important?
Yeah, well, resilience is the ability to, it's not only to successfully handle those life tasks that are challenging or, you know, adverse, but also that ability to anticipate beforehand and to develop those coping strategies so that life is less stressful, that there's more confidence and more peace. And the thing about resilience skills is that there are many, many of them. And we're going to talk about some of them today. And similar to, you know, the science of fulfillment, there are certain resilience factors that are universal. And there are also those that are the unique, you know, the unique resilience skills that we develop as individuals. And every single one of us has already, I mean, you wouldn't be in the position that you're in today if you didn't already have resilience skills. One of the problems is that we're not aware of them. We don't recognize the power of the ones that either we have or others have in order for us to actually put them, you know, like we have this tool chest and that we can take them out. And I think it's very obvious why it's important. I mean, in this tumultuous world that we live in this world where everything, because of technology, is we're constantly, you know, in touch with, and people are in touch with us, that it is so important. And we're going to talk more about the qualities. And also, you know, you as managers, as leaders, are in a pivotal position to help reduce your team's stress and to help your employees develop that essential capability, and that is to have more tools and to practice being a more resilient employee and individual.
Yeah, Marissa, one of the things that you might think about is this journey in life that we talked about at the last session of having a clear life plan. Where am I going? Think about it in some ways as driving an automobile. And, you know, you're headed somewhere on vacation. You've made a plan. You've got everybody excited about it. The family's agreed to this particular travel. Maybe you're going to the West Coast. But things are going to happen along the way. And part of the issue here of the art and building resilience is anticipating some things that you could avoid in advance. Being vigilant. Deer may be jumping out if you're driving at dawn or dusk. You might need the energy for a long drive, and you might need to recover from challenges like a blown tire or swerving to miss a truck. So I'd like to share with you one of the things now that, if I can get a video up.
So while you do that, you know, what you say is so important in the sense of anticipating and paying attention to the little smoke signals before they become.
So Marissa, that's a great story. And any comments you want to make about that before we move into the resilience? Because I think that story encompasses, I think, all three areas we're going to talk about today as part of building resilience.
Yes. You know, one thing I would love to really underscore about this is that negativity can only produce more negativity. Negativity shuts down creativity. It just keeps you, it's like it buries you in the circumstance, and it's dark and you can't stand out. So the most important resilience skills, and we'll talk more about this, is reframing the story, reframing the challenge so that there is positivity in it. So let's go on, and there'll be many more references to my story.
And if you have questions about Marissa's story, about anything we're talking about, please shoot the questions in on your screen. Danielle is monitoring and gathering them, and we'll have a chance for some questions and answers at the end. So the three areas that seem to be the strongest from our work and from research of other people is this whole area of managing stress, energy, and time, which we're going to start with. And then we'll go on to perceptions and reframing that Marissa talked about. And then one thing we discovered is 95% of people that we've interviewed over the age of 40 have had a major setback in their life. So we're going to talk a little bit about how do you come out of that, and how do you come out of it in a far better fashion than many people we interviewed described. So Marissa, let you share with us a little bit about the issues of stress and burnout.
So, so there are antidotes. There are ways to deal with stress and burnout. And can we move on to the next slide?
We're on the slide with antidotes and stress right now.
It's not on my screen. Okay, that's okay.
Okay.
I can talk from it. So there are a number, as I said, there are many skill factors. There are many resilient skill factors. But some that really stand out is the sense of efficacy, of feeling that your actions matter. So whether we're talking about this company of over 1,000 people, many of whom, before we did this balanced scorecard, felt that what they did didn't count for anything. And that was one of the big, one of the big change elements. And then going back to my story, I mean, you could almost, I'm sorry, see it in my energy that, you know, there was nothing I could do. I'm so sorry. And then I just came from an experience, you know, where we turned a company around, and I felt empowered. I felt this sense of that what I did make a difference. And then the other thing, you know, in this, I'm going to skip to the third one because it's so important. Whether it was in a business thing, the strength, that relationships have the power in reducing stress and increasing confidence is enormous. In fact, that is one of the most important factors in achieving in every single area, is to have solid, positive relationships. And I built that in this health venture as well as was built in this company. And the thing about mindfulness is that fulfillment doesn't happen way out there. It starts in the moment. It's feeling more positivity moment in moment, taking more responsibility so that you feel more effective, and starting right away. Okay, how can I recharge my body so that I'm more productive, I'm more focused, I'm healthier? And, you know, it's by the importance of sleep and moving your body and having fun. And we're going to talk now about one of the, perhaps the most critical issue around stress. And that's, you know, the thing around time. So how many of you feel like you just don't have the time to do everything that's on your to-do list, that there's so much to do and there's not enough time? Well, you're right. There is not enough time to do everything that comes to us. And that's why it is so essential that we prioritize the things that we want to accomplish that's really important to us, that aligns with our vision and our value. And when we prioritize and when we live from that place, we reduce our stress. And it's sort of like, you know, everyone has the same 24 hours. And, you know, it's like this, you know, I compare it with having like this liquid cement, and you can just let it flow everywhere and it just wanders on its own. Or you can say, you know what, I'm going to build a swimming pool. And you've put it into that form, that structure. And that's what our priorities are. They become the structure by which we pour the most valuable resource we really have, which is our time. So I love this chart because this, for me, really came out of my experience with CIT. With the balanced scorecard, you know, we had our vision in the middle, and we asked, what are all the areas that impact on providing on, that's going to impact on our reaching our vision. And of course, things like employees and customers and marketing and technology. And so when I decided that I was going to use this process, I did the same kind of chart. And in it, there were all the areas that mattered to me, that were my life. And they include, for me, work is an essential part of my life, and health. And as we saw in business life, that there is the necessity of creating alignment and seeing the overlap of interests and skills in business life, and how we break down those silos. And when we're talking about work-life balance and having a fulfilled life, we really are talking about removing a lot of those silos and seeing how we can align both. And so the problem is that most of us don't know how we spend our time. So I have found one of the most useful tools is that we spend, you know, a couple of days, 2 or 3 days, just really charting how you spend your time, because most of the time we're not conscious of it. And the same thing on the weekend, and really seeing where it fits in all these different areas and whether it aligns with what matters to you.
One of the interesting things, Marissa, I think, and I think we saw this, Marissa and I had a chance to do a program in Atlanta a couple of months ago, and it, like many others, we found that there was a gap between, for most people in doing this kind of work, between what they really wanted to do and where their time was being spent. And that alone is a pretty big aha. If you don't know the gap, you're feeling like you're struggling and don't understand why. Part of it's clarifying where time actually is going. It was the first step for many to say, there are some things that I probably really shouldn't be doing.
So what we know is that somewhere between 20 to 40 to 50% of employees' time is not focused on what really matters. And so as a manager, you know, how do you help your people? And do you yourself know how to leverage that time in productive and fulfilling ways? And this is a great opportunity to not only increase productivity and engagement, but also to reduce stress, because stress, the ongoing stress, you know, there's like the stress of getting an illness, or, you know, you lose a client, but in some ways that can be temporary. But about harnessing time or not, if we don't do it, we live in chronic stress.
The other thing I might add here is that it was kind of a surprise to me somewhere along the road of doing work with time management, is that it's not that obvious a skill to people, and that managers had two ahas when we've done workshops with them. One is, I didn't realize where my time is going and how much often gets put into what we would consider low value, high urgency but low value kinds of work, responding to emails and responding to things that really didn't need to be done immediately. But the other was, what are managers doing to their employees? To what extent are they exacerbating this problem for employees because of things that they do, the way they do requests, maybe perhaps not putting timelines on them, that really add to that. So it is a teachable skill, but it's not an innate skill that people are born with.
Exactly. It's not something, it's something that has to be practiced and and really focused on, because it's not a natural skill that we have. Yeah.
So moving to the next area, and I think Marissa, this is an area Marissa's taught me a lot on, is this whole issue of perceptions. And I think we all know that perception is reality to us, but there's a lot more here than meets the eye.
So what is perception? Well, yeah, so here's a couple of quotes, but perception is the meaning that we make of things. And someone said to me a long time ago, she said that we are all meaning-making machines. We make meaning out of everything. And so Nelson Mandela, and I'm just going to quickly go over this, but he said, it's the only thing in the world that can transform your results, and you don't have to change a single thing in your environment. And the interesting thing about this business is that a new CEO came in, but nobody got fired. But what the cultural change that took place is that people changed their perceptions of themselves, of each other, the work they were doing, and that they could accomplish their vision. Henry Ford, in fact, I went to Dearborn, Michigan, which is where he built this incredible hotel and transported Thoreau's bike, not Thoreau, the Wright brothers bike shop there. But he said, here's a couple of quotes that I love. Whether you think you can or you think you can't, you're correct. He also said, failure is simply the opportunity to begin again, and this time more intelligently. And, one of the things that I love so much about Henry Ford is that he had countless of failures, and he was being sued at times, and chief engineers were quitting on him who would say, you have no idea about this. You have no idea this can be done. And he said, oh, yes, I do. I have the idea. So we are so much more than we think we are. So Harvard University was very interested in studying geniuses. What makes a genius? And to their surprise, they discovered that 97% of all babies display genius qualities. But after 18 months, that percentage keeps dropping and dropping until with adults it's under 20%. So, the question was, do we become stupid over time? And they said what they discovered is that there is a steady increase in limiting beliefs. And for me, this image of the baby who becomes from a crawler stands up. So if you've ever watched a baby learning how to walk, and it's talk, it's everything, but they keep on falling down, and they get up again. And I've never heard about a baby who said, you know what, I guess I'm just not meant to be a walker. I don't have the right skills, I don't have the right education, or whatever. But what takes place as they get older is that our schools, our parents, our culture, the media keeps on telling us in certain ways not to do this, we're not good at that, etc. And that becomes our new operating system. The good thing, okay, so I'm just going to tell you another story I love. As you can see, I love stories. So elephants are the working animal in India. And how they train them is that when they're babies, they tie them to this heavy post, and the baby elephant pulls and tugs, and it can't break free, and eventually it just gives up and gives in. And as the elephant becomes an adult, they then just use these river reeds that they twine, and they attach it to the leg of the animal and to the post. And the elephants never break free. Now, of course, they could. I mean, they weigh tons. But they have been conditioned to think they are powerless. So all of us have been conditioned to feel in some ways or another, and it's often on a subconscious level, that we're powerless. Now, more time, we could really delve into that. But just over the next day or week, just to notice your self-talk, and where do you hear yourself telling yourself, I can't do this. So I feel like we're in a helicopter. So we're just like sort of touching key areas that create empowerment and fulfillment. And one of them is fear. My belief is that fear is something we will never get rid of. But it doesn't have to be in the driver's seat. It can be a passenger in the back. And again, there's this thing about reframing, which is one of the key resiliency skills. And really what fear is saying we're on the edge of a life that we've known, and we may not like it, but we're comfortable with it because we know it. And we're on that edge of the life that we don't know. That's what's not completely predictable. So, you know, related to that resilience skill is learning to tolerate that, okay, I know I'm uncomfortable because I'm taking a risk, I'm doing something I haven't done before, there's a new circumstance that's happening, but I'm learning to tolerate it, accept it, and even find the gift in it for the sake of growth. Because being uncomfortable is the only way we grow.
So we've talked about, and thank you, Marissa, I think it's two areas, and I think we do underestimate the impact that has on us. I know in the work we do extensively with employee surveys or doing interviews with employees, I guess it never continues to amaze me how people have arrived at perceptions that are often so different than their manager or senior management in the organization. And I think part of the issue is getting whatever reality on the table, but realizing and getting managers and leaders to realize that people do have fears, they do have perceptions, and it requires really, really good communication and conversation to move those along. The other area, the third area that, as I said earlier, jumped out at me so significantly was the amount of personal stories that were told to me as we did the research. People who had sudden job losses, people dealing with a health issue like your situation, Marissa, dealing with a divorce, dealing with the loss of a parent at perhaps a very young age. There were so many stories, and some of the people we talked to were quite good at being able to get retracked again. The highly fulfilled people in our study seem to have a set of tools and approaches and thinking that enabled them to do that. There's others who literally were in malaise for years trying to get back tracked again. People who had job losses and had no network and sort of had to start over again in life. So we looked at what techniques were being used by those who were most successful in that process, and the research told us that that almost everyone was having intermediate setbacks, and the four techniques that stood out, and there were more, and in the book we cover a lot more. The last two chapters of the book have a good deal of depth on the whole area of resilience and tools, so we refer you back to the book for more examples. But I think one element was scoping back up to my overarching goals. How, where do I want to go in life, and where is this on that route? I think people who could do that recognize that while this is a really tough situation, it's sort of a bump in the road, maybe a big bump, but on a road to something more long-term, more enduring. And I think it helped many people, and many used also their spirituality on that side. I think Marissa talked about number 2, which was reframing the setback. Is this a setback, or is it really an opportunity? I heard so many stories of people who actually turned and started a new career after a job loss, or got out of an industry they had been in for 30 years, and all of a sudden we're in a new industry, learning new things. Reassessing, retuning capabilities, I think, is a big one. It's a great moment to say, hey, are there some skills I would really like to develop? We heard stories of people going back to college, learning new things, taking technology on that they hadn't done before, and feeling more confident in a new area. And then the last one, a pretty important one, is about relationships. It's networking. And the people who were most successful in turning a setback around were those who had some very close personal relationships. Could be a spouse or a great close friend, a mentor. And mentoring was talked about many times as being so important. Or they also had a broad network. So we talked to one executive who moved to a different geography last year, and that job didn't work out, and he lost the job, and he was starting out in a new environment, new technology companies around him, and he wasn't getting very far with interviews. And I think one of his conclusions was, you know, I was so busy, so busy for the last 10 years, I really didn't do things I should have. I should have been doing things on LinkedIn. I should have built my network. But I kind of let the network fizzle over time, and now I'm starting all over again in this work for a job search. And I think his positivity will get him there, but it's taking him far longer than it might have had he had a more vibrant network. So networking can help in all parts, both work and non-work parts of life. But those failures can only be stepping stones if you really use them the right way. Well, those are the three areas that we've talked about that I think, from our research in the book, help deal with resilience. And we've only given you the tip of the iceberg today. In the workshops we do in organizations and our programs, we get into a lot more depth. So we tried to give you a flavor today for some of that, and hopefully coupled with the book, it will provide some great tools for you in overcoming those challenges. So a couple of ideas that Marissa and I put together that we thought are things that leaders could do today. And we know most people who are attending are leaders in some fashion. They're leaders in an organization, they're leaders in their family, they play leadership in volunteer organizations. One issue here is spread the word. So many people that we interviewed said, I wish I had thought about some of these issues earlier before I hit the bump in the road. I wish I had read more and thought about these things when I was in college or in my early 20s, or when I was thinking about changing careers in my early 50s. So help others spread the word. Share this, share the webinars we've done, share books. There's so much in this field, and we've got a lot of references in the book to other sources as well. Assess yourself. Be honest with yourself. How are you today, truly? Are you at the fulfillment level you really want to be at? Do you see yourself heading toward your life goals? So we've offered a free trial for those on the webinar today, and in a moment Danielle will share how you can take a free self-assessment of that. The third area is this issue about skills, coaching skills. So things that you can do, whether you're a manager in an organization or you influence managers, is help them grow their resilience and fulfillment skills. The managers at that Jack in the Box that we talked about in other fulfilled organizations, one of the things we learned is that they view people far more holistically. The great managers, these are the managers who were getting high profit, high revenue growth, long-term employees staying twice as long as other restaurants, and being able to have great guest satisfaction scores. We talked to these managers, and what jumped out at us is the holism with which they knew their people. Who had child care? Who had elder care? Who was going to school? And they put this together in a package that worked for that restaurant. They were great people crafting talent, and all of these managers are dealt a wide variance of talent in every community. The great managers put it together in a unique way. The weak managers, managers who didn't really understand fulfillment of people, tended to drive with one-size-fits-all rules. Nobody gets Fridays off. No, you can't do this, you can't do that, and tended to lose people very quickly. So it is a learnable skill, and we encourage you to help those in your organizations develop that. The fourth would be tools and education, resources, books, webinars, videos. Help people become more aware of this, particularly in organizations today. When we go in with our employee survey work, we're seeing stress levels often off the chart. The rubber band has been pulled, people are struggling with work-life balance, and there are tools and techniques and approaches could be used for the wellness of the people, but the well-being of the organization to be able to retain these people and retain them in a highly productive manner. And lastly, performance management is one of these areas that's been debated a lot. Some organizations have been tossing out the old systems, others doubling down. But I think a key word here is mentoring. And one of the things that we saw in the great organizations doing well is that sense of being able to mentor employees holistically. Use the performance reviews, and hopefully you change them to conversations, and you're doing them regularly. And those conversations really need to talk about where those employees are going, where they are in their life, how are they going to get there, what do they need developmentally. That makes a huge difference and changes the performance management process from an onerous task to be checked off and one with little credibility in many organizations to one that's a powerful form of dialogue. So with that, I'll come back and as Danielle is summing up the questions and can share again with you the discount on the book, and we'll take some questions. Danielle?
Great. So remember that the discount coupon for your copy of Fulfilled, if you're interested in the topics today or on our previous webinar, is located at the bottom of your invitation for this webinar. If you have stories, we would love to hear from you. We have a Facebook page, and we have a mailing list through our wsheeman.com website. And if you're interested in the fulfillment assessment, please send me an email at dnovotny@metris.com, and I will send that right out to you. So we have a couple questions today. The first one is, what are a couple tools managers can use when mentoring their employees?
Marissa, do you want to take that?
Sure. Well, the first thing is to identify what is the particular issue or subject that you want, that you and your employee are going to discuss, and that it be done in a way that is exploratory, that you know, this is what's happening right now, and to really get input from the employee in terms of where they feel that they need more help, where they feel that they have the skills, and where they feel that they need more, and very much having this this mindset that I'm here together to teach this employee, to help this employee succeed, rather than to focus on what the problems are.
Yeah, one of the interesting examples that we've written about in the past is WD-40 Corporation. Yeah. And Gary Ridge, who's the CEO, has said that when he enters the year thinking about their new year, the big question he wrestles with is, how can we help every employee get an A? Mm-hmm. And he holds his managers accountable for that. It's pretty fascinating because they end up with this high performance curve. It doesn't look like the normal curve we'd see because they went in with an assumption that we don't have to only get 5% A's and 15% B's and a lot of C's. They go in with the view that let's try to help everyone get an A and do it from that perspective.
Yeah.
Danielle?
Great, thank you. The next question is, what tips would you suggest for strengthening your network?
That's a good one. And I think one that I'll add in, and Marissa may have some that she wants to add as well, I would say use tools like a LinkedIn on a regular basis. It doesn't mean just gratuitously. I think one of the things we learned from the interviews is that people who had thousands of Facebook friends didn't have thousands of friends. They just had thousands of friends on paper. And I think LinkedIn is a similar process. I was at a seminar earlier this year with some research, and they were saying about 100 people is about the number that you can realistically manage to have as a decent friendship network and be able to do what people need to do to keep friends and to continue those relationships. And that means touching those people at least once a year, and preferably more often in some way, with a note or with information or a card at the holidays or something that keeps you in touch. So that might be the optimum number, and maybe some of our type A's here in the audience, we can do 150, but it's not 1,000. But I think keeping that network open is helpful. And the second part of that networking is that often opportunities and relationships, and new jobs, by the way, come from the second or third level relationships that people have. There are people who don't yet know about someone, but they do know someone who knows you. And those are often where those opportunities start.
So what I would add to that is that, to sit down first and identify, well, what are the qualities that you're looking for in these relationships? And, are there new things you want to learn or hear about? And where might these people be? So again, you're getting specificity is so important. And the other part of networking is, what can I give? It's not just receiving, but how can I be what I call a person of increase? And also to see, in the world of work that you're in, to make that time to have coffee or to have lunch with people who you'd like to get to know, better, and particularly across those silos.
Are there additional ones, Danielle?
Nope, that is all the questions we have today. Thank you so much for your input, everyone.
Okay, and I want to thank you. Marissa, thank you so much for joining me today. What a wonderful ride, and how much I've learned from you over the years. I want to thank you for being a part of this.
Yeah, and I want to thank you, Bill. As I read the book Fulfilled, it's just like all of a sudden my human resources hat went on, and I realized that this book is like having a personal coach in how to create work-life balance. And work-life balance has been a topic, particularly in the world of HR, for decades. And I read this and I said, this is it. This is a system and process. And and I called you up and I said, Bill, we have to bring this into the work world. And so thank you very much for saying, okay, let's talk about it. I just love your openness and that ability you have to say, sure, let's explore this and let's look at something that we haven't done before. So thank you so much.
Well, now I'm blushing virtually, so thank you for the nice comments. And we're delighted to have Marissa Harris, the former VP of HR for CIT, with us today for the second in our fulfillment series. And we will be announcing our third coming up for the spring before long, and we hope that those of you who are with us today can join us, and wishing you all a healthy and happy holiday. Thank you.
So I have one other thing, is if you have suggestions or something that you would like to have more information on, just to email, and we would love to hear what your needs are.
Thank you.